This one might just do Trump in. I was a wholesale conspiracy theorist. I really was. I was living here in New York. You know, never in my life had I ever seen a tower not just fall, but just turn to dust. It was called Dustify. That was something that I was willing to accept because nobody knew anything, and so the thought was, oh, more will come out. But then when it came out and what was revealed was, surprise, there's nothing to reveal. It was sort of insane to believe that could be true with 2,000 bodies on the ground and really no explanations. And then Loose Change came out. From there, I dove headlong into conspiracy theory. There was a credit union that operated by a guy named, I think this is right, Larry King, not to be confused with the broadcaster. And he had been accused, credibly, of taking kids out of the local boys' home. I believe it's a very famous boys' home. I'm forgetting the name of it. Like a nationally well-known boys' home. And this is where Larry King would go hunting for boys that either were willing to go along or could be sort of tricked into going along, coerced later. Well, so this god-awful part of the story was put into the book by a very left-wing, very progressive author called Nick Bryant, and it has never been disproven. Never. It covered the testimonies, Bryant's interviews, and on some of these other prosecutors and things that were involved. Some of them were on film, and it was all sort of turned into this massive takedown, right? Sort of investigative takedown of not just Larry King. He sang at like the 1988 RNC convention, I believe. But a whole ton of politicians of every stripe across the aisle, including some folks that I could not believe were associated with this man. Because part of the reason that some of this stuff was recorded was because these kids testified. One of the kids that was involved was turned into the fall guy. This kid was victimized just along with everybody else. In fact, in the conspiracy world, it almost looks like he had been broken apart and created into different alters. I know something about alters because my mom is a therapist. And she has worked with individuals with DID. That is sort of official therapy name for having altered personalities or alternate personalities. When I saw on these documentaries really deep trauma and potentially programming or altered personalities, my experience with my mother told me it was possible. There's another thing. There was video of this guy. I think his name was Paul. I want to say Paul. Don't remember the last name. So having said that, I was totally bought in on this idea of what had happened potentially to these poor kids in Omaha. That was horrible. I mean horrible to think about that. And to think about the fact that unlike in my past, there's no like one bad side I could blame like they teach you in the movies in the 80s. It was both of them, Republicans and Democrats. It sort of made me feel like there was no place safe in the world. Or at least there was no place safe if you were a poor kid. So the ironic thing was, hardly anybody got punished. One of the kids who testified then changed his testimony in the second part of the trial, then changed it back in the third, and then died from suicide. So I say all this to say, Jeffrey Epstein has absolute down-the-line similarities. It was just the largest scale version. It was the international, I'd even seen in other countries versions of this same issue, like Somebody Dutroux, which was god-awful. Don't go look that up unless you're really ready. But that was like, some other country. And then I had seen these interviews with a survivor. I'm going to forget her name too. And she claimed stuff that happened to her at the hands of powerful people. The only thing that drove me out of the conspiracy community was how mean and right-wing it became. It really had been a place for people who believe in UFOs and crystals and stuff. You would have been more likely to find someone who was going to help you start an organic vegetable garden over some dumbass who's going to say all the immigrants should leave. So weird. I remember back then I thought, here's how we're all going to get together because we're all against the uniparty. But I do think this might actually break him. Because this issue was around before Trump became sort of the trust the plan guy, the we go one, we go all. They're always looking for somebody they could trust. And even in the conspiracy community was like, we're so powerless, who is going to help us? Who make us feel safe again in our own homes? And they settled on Trump. I don't know why. And then it became the right wing has started co-opting my crazy crunchy left. And now all that co-opting is coming home to roost. Because people like me, we are much more chill than the wackos they have running the show, the MAGA-ville. This is the issue that animated a huge part of the new base that started to come to the Republican side. These people are going to share off if they can't find a way to satisfy their desire to know what the fuck is happening and who was involved. Because the Uniparty knows it's Republicans and Democrats and independents and leftists who all participated